We ready and back?
Yes.
Great. I'd like to call to order the special Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, July 7th. Roll call, please.
Mayor Kumar,
Here.
Ms. Bichetti,
Present.
Ms. Elder,
Here.
Mayor Gallo,
Here.
Ms. Harper,
Here.
Mr. Love,
Here.
Ms. McPherson,
Here.
Mr. Sleesman,
Here.
Mayor Weiss,
Here.
Ms. Wiggum.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Certification regarding notice of meeting, please.
Mr. President, I advise that notice of this meeting has been posted more than 24 hours in advance and that all usual notification has been given to the media and other interested persons. All requirements of the Ohio Revised Code and rules and bylaws of this board regarding notice of meeting have been complied with.
Thank you so much. Next, we have an item on for discussion regarding adjustment of the sales and use tax for transit purposes. And just wanted to hear from management a little bit. India, when we spoke on Thursday and we were setting the agenda, I did not think this was going to be on for a vote. So I was trying to understand from your perspective. We had a special board meeting last week. We were missing some board members. I know this is up for discussion today, but was the purpose of this to show board support for when you're going out and doing community engagement with corporate leaders and foundations and things like that?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Kumar, for the question. So if you look on your agenda under the special board meeting, it should be on page 2, I guess, for the trustees. The language states that we will discuss and vote. However, the vote is relegated to the year that the board would like the team to move forward with for tax levy proceedings and kind of the meetings with all of the communities and things like that. So to your point, Mayor, we understand that the board is trying to decide and weigh the pros and cons as far as timing. At the last meeting, just to give a recap, we gave 3 recommendations, or 3 options, 3 options for timing. Of course, the earlier the better as far as the technical side of it, but the political side also has to kind of weigh the balance of whether or not we have buy-in. So we are generally looking at November of 2026, May of 2027, or November of 2027. It is not the recommendation of staff to move forward beyond that time. By that time, we will be in a little bit more of a pickle as far as the finances to be able to have service reductions, and we want to make sure to stave those off as early as possible. We understand, as Mayor Kumar mentioned, that we have some work to do regarding the outreach, continued outreach with our stakeholders, primarily the business community, and making sure that we have the advocacy to be able to get the win at the ballot box. We want to make sure that we get to the date that works the best for the win. So the point of the language that we have here today, our ask is to make sure that the board can select the 2026 or 2027 year, understanding that if 27 is selected, we have a little bit more time to decide. You have a little bit more time to figure out if it's May or November. Of course, if it's 2026, then we have a different ball of wax where we need to move forward and be able to kind of sign in by August 5th for the November ballot. And then we want to be able to move expediently either way. So the question for today for vote, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, is to make sure that we can have something in writing as well to be able to document what the board selected as far as the year with the intent for us to move forward. So we have something to really come back to the business members and the stakeholders with. So we're not asking you for anything specific if we, beyond the year, and then go from there. Does that make sense? Or am I missing?
No, that's a pretty good overview. You know, for me, as we've discussed offline, and I think in you know, some emails as well, and listening to Burgess and Burgess, really connecting a bit more with the corporate community first, and the foundations and the key community stakeholders, just for their feedback and for your knowledge as a management team to finalize what that increase may look like. For me, is needed first before we would just vote on this and a date. I think that additional information is super important to engage our community first. And I think as we've talked, the first early voting starts in 73 days. I personally, I'm not going to speak for all the board members. I don't know how you pull together a campaign in that period of time. So I think it's 2027, May or November. And I think we have a bit more time, which gives management, 4 to 8 weeks to get out there and really talk with some community and business stakeholders, come back to board with a final recommendation of an amount and a May versus November, but really sort of a game plan and a roadmap if we've got a little bit more time. So that's sort of the direction I thought we were heading, but knowing that you might want something in other than our comments of publicly supporting a ballot initiative for the organization, whether you required a resolution of some type when you go to meet with these leaders, that we formally are all in lockstep and on the same page with management. If that's what we were trying to achieve out of this, that's what I was trying to understand.
Yes, that's accurate. So I'm sorry, and I'll clarify. As the staff representative, right, and myself, I'll say we need something, whether it's a resolution, I'm looking at legal when I'm saying this, that's the formal title. We need documentation, right, to be able to say the board, to your point, is in lockstep. You all are an appointed and elected board, right, through the Mayors and Managers Association and also through the City of Cleveland and the county for Cuyahoga. And so your consensus really represents the amalgamation of different schools of thought. And so in the conversations that we have had since the beginning of the year and since really before the holiday last year, and going out to a lot of our stakeholders and counterparts to just understand the temperature for a levy period with RTA, one of the first questions they ask is, well, what does your board think? And so we say, well, we're interested and we're reviewing the information with them. And we're at the point now where we really need to have a concrete answer from the board, one voice, to be able to give us direction on what year to move forward with. And then to your point, Mayor, the 0.5 is also something that I know we've talked about, of course, and this, if I can just give a little bit of information for you to mull over. There's a lot of questions out there about what the future of RTA looks like. And so even through the Burgess survey, and for the team, correct me if I'm getting anything incorrect, we've had a lot of surveys out there, whether it's through our work with ETC that we come to you every quarter on for more of the tactics and the traction and all of the data, customer surveys and community surveys for community impact and resonance, and how do we actually impact the economy. And then we also have the Burgess and Burgess information that was given to us. 600 people, I believe, were reached out to, and then 55 decision maker stakeholders throughout the community. And their vision was very different depending on who you talk to. And so I think we're at the precipice where we're looking at, do we maintain the status quo, right? And there's a certain amount of funding that allows us to do that. And then there's also a certain amount of funding that allows us to do a little bit better and maintain where we are and not have to have service cuts. And then you get into a territory where you're transformative. And so that means we're starting to be competitive with our sister agencies across the country. Excuse me. A lot of folks in their survey through the Burgess had wildly different ideas of what the future of transit should look like. Some should look like Waymo, some should look like autonomous vehicles, some should blow it up and start all over again. Some should continue and get better of how we are, and so it was very different. And so that told us that we needed to provide a landscape to have people work off of. And that's what we're striving to do with the strategic plan. But we understand that the amount of money, whether it's the 0.5 or not, means different things to different people. And to your point, Mayor, we have to be able to understand what that temperature is when we go out and have these additional conversations. We as the staff recommend 0.5, and I'm clear to say that because we have been charged with coming up with transformative. If that is not the charge of the board or of the community when we go back and forth and see what people have a temperature and an appetite for funding-wise, then we have to adjust our plan. But as a service provider for public transit in Cleveland, it is our responsibility to give you the best that we can possibly come up with, and that's the reason for the 0.5, but we understand the back and forth that may happen. With the timing, it would be great if we could leave here with a document in hand that states the interest and the commitment of this board as a unified unit, that was a double negative, a unified group, to be able to give the staff direction and a North Star for timing. That way, when we go to those stakeholders, we can answer that first question to say, yes, our board is all committed, they're all in, and we have the date, or at least the year of fill in the blank, to move forward to, so that way we can start to fill in who might form a PAC, who might be interested, who might say yes at the ballot box without getting into trouble as far as what our guardrails are before we actually hand it over. So that's what we're asking today. We do have a few things written up for you to expedite if necessary, to be able to have that sign on. We don't know what your decision will be, but we do need to walk away with a year. Because if we are in, again, 2026, that means we have to do a couple things very fast. If we're in 2027, we also want to capture the moment and want to make sure that we move with the runway that you want us to have. And the further we delay the decision for the year, the less runway we actually can move on. So it will help us tremendously.
Okay. And if you could pass this down, I was talking with Trustee Weiss last night about this, because this vote also, when it says submit to the electors of Cuyahoga County, that looks to me like a submission to the Board of Elections, that we would be approving that and management would be making the decision. I also think it's important that, to your point, as we've talked before, that the board, with the recommendation of management, specifically sets a date and amount, and this leaves it open. And so I know there were some questions on that. Can you send it over to Janet? And so I know in talking about this, of trying to make sure that we formally show support, that we're in lockstep with management, but we're just looking over the next 4 to 6, 8 weeks for more input from management and to answer some questions. I know we played around with some language here that we think may achieve that. And Mayor Weiss, if you want to just read that and discuss thoughts on that, of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think, in talking with the chair, I think I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleagues on the board, but what we tried to do is give a little bit more specificity than what was in the draft that was distributed with the agenda. And also add some language that indicated what our expectations would be over the next coming months to achieve what I think would be a consensus on moving forward. I do think we are, I think, of the mind, or at least some of us, that something in 2026 seemed to us not in the agency's best interest to proceed with that kind of a timing. And so one of the clarifications that we have in this draft is making it clear that it is 2027, which gives everyone a little bit of breathing room and an opportunity to move forward. And I think the other important part is it does describe kind of our expectations, as I said, the conversations with business leaders, community organizations, and other stakeholders, that we still need to pursue that, and that's going to take a little bit of time, but that would be our expectations to put us in a position where something on the ballot could be done in 2027. We did leave the amount as an open amount at the moment. I think you articulated well, Ms. Birdsong-Terry, the kind of the approach to the amount and the goals that we foresee based on the amount that we feel is needed for the long-term health and stability of the agency. So that's left open for the moment. But this was intended to be really just an alternative to the language that was originally circulated for the board to consider. So with that, I will.
And I think, again, I know Trustee Smith, we were speaking, after the last meeting, and I know what we're trying to do is just provide a little breathing room to get to some of those corporate leaders to get the feedback, and so management can explain what their recommendation is, why it is, and get that feedback. I think it's important to get that before we would make a determination of the board and at least solicit some of that feedback. I don't know if you have any comments based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few comments and a few questions as you all have presented this alternative to us. And one of my first questions before I start the rest of my comments, are you all recommending that we move forward with this resolution today to make a decision on 2027?
Originally, I thought we were going to have a discussion today and maybe vote at the regular board meeting, and that would be up to the board as a whole, whether they are comfortable to move forward to show that support that we're in lockstep with management, or whether we want to wait 2 weeks. That would be up to the board.
Okay. Well, I think for me, as someone who sits in this chair and the person whose chair that I'm literally sitting in, and I think about this from multiple perspectives, from the political perspective and the need to get the political will to support us, but also the perspective of our clients and also the employees at GCRTA. And I wouldn't be myself if I didn't say that this conversation should have happened 18 months ago. And we are well behind the 8 ball. And I definitely don't think it's fair to our clients, our communities, those who work for GCRTA, for us to wait any longer. I supported a mayor whose campaign was Cleveland Can't Wait, and that is called for bold decisions. And I do think we need to make a bold decision today and let staff and our community know if we're moving forward on 2026 or 2027. I do have thoughts that I do think on that year, but I definitely urge this committee, this board, to make a decision today, given all the various things that staff have presented and shared with us. I just think it's the best thing to do for our riders. You know, at the same time, RTA has not gone to the ballot in 50 years, and I think that's commendable. And I think the vision that was shared with us last week, the work around the strategic plan, the transit-oriented development, there's so many different elements that are ready to take RTA to the next level. And as a board, it's our duty and responsibility to make a bold decision, but also support staff in doing that. And so I don't know if there's any other trustees that would agree with me that we need to make a decision today. I would love for anyone to be more vocal or share about that, but today, for me, I'm ready to make a decision today if we're going to go forward in 2026 or 2027.
I can make that decision as well for the year.
Yep.
And I'll jump in and say that I agree with you wholly, Trustee Smith-Wiggum. You know, I think over the last couple of meetings, I've agreed with Mayor Kumar on, you know, the concerns around moving forward with the campaign and what the next 73 days. And, you know, I've had concerns and expressed these about connecting with the our business community. While I have those concerns, though, I agree. I mean, my competing concerns are waiting longer than we waited. My concern is additional cuts to our clients and our riders who do not deserve to have additional barriers in their transportation and their daily move around. And I think that Raj has repeatedly also talked to us about a cliff happening in 2028, and the thought of even waiting or considering November, for example, November of next year, seems dangerous and risky. And I would not like to see us do something like that. I'm also equally concerned with waiting until May, even considering, lower turnouts potentially. We've talked about costs potentially coming about that time, if I recall correctly. So, I would urge us to make a decision today, and I would urge us to make a decision earlier than later.
I'm in that same boat as well. The longer we tiptoe around providing a direction, the more certain service cuts become. And those become a reality and making the lives of our riders and our operators more difficult. So I would very much like us to make a decision on this issue and be able to lead from ahead rather than behind.
I'll echo the sentiment. And I'll even be more specific. I think we should go this year, and I think we should go for 0.5. Trustee Smith-Wiggum, I had Cleveland Can't Wait in my mind a lot as I was thinking about this the last few days. I also had the conversation with the business community that keeps coming up, and I've said this in the past elsewhere, so it's not a new concept. The business community is not a homogenous thing, and there are a lot small businesses, medium-sized businesses that have no idea this conversation's happening, that will have an opinion and will have a stronger opinion if they lose the transit that currently their workers rely on, and they don't think about this stuff, and they shouldn't have to think about this stuff. We should be giving the community and the business community the service that they need. And right now, we're looking at service cuts coming up pretty soon here that is going to remove some of that service. And so, I mean, I come from a research background, and we need to get the message out. We need to have those meetings. Don't get me wrong. I agree with all of that. And when the empirical evidence is that you get 5 times the GDP growth for every dollar that you put into transit, and if we have a 0.5 increase, that would be an extra $700 million in GDP for this region. 3 times business sales for every capital dollar you invest in transit, and that would mean an additional $420 million in sales in Greater Cleveland. 1/4 back in taxes generated, so we would have got 35 million approximately in extra tax revenue based on this. Supply chain jobs would increase by 1,876, based on empirical evidence estimates. These aren't guaranteed. Hotel premiums for well-linked areas with quality transit are 11% premium prices. Hotels would do better. High quality transit would mean a savings of $1,040 per household. The unemployment rate goes down by 3.1%. Poverty goes down by 13% if you have high quality transit. $100 million extra dollars in hospital costs if they didn't have good connections to transit in this community in Cleveland. The schools rely on us to a level of $28.7 million. Commercial vacancies are 2% less in areas with high quality transit. And as was reported to us here, we would go from 334,000 to 396,000 jobs within 15-minute commute on transit. And we would go from 438,000 to 780,000 workers within 15 minutes of transit. That's the trips. If the business community can't get behind that, I don't know what to do. We have to get that message out. But also, there's a certain point at which I'm not thinking about these numbers. I'm thinking about the sealant company in St. Clair Superior who had a real estate brokerage tell them that they could save a lot of money by relocating to a greenfield out in the exurbs. And Team Neo, thank you Team Neo for this, did an analysis with that small business and said, hey, actually, a whole bunch of your workers rely on the 2 transit lines that are close to your current factory. Maybe you should stick around. And the CEO immediately said, yeah, we're staying here. I'm not losing those guys. They made that decision based on transit lines that are proximate to their plant. I have no idea if those lines are going to be convenient enough for those workers in a year or 2 if we don't actually do something about this. And I want that decision to be made 10, 100, 200, 500 times over. And I think actually it is already being made, but if we've reduced the value proposition to small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses by having these service cuts, the business community is going to vote with their feet. It's easier to build in greenfields, which just increase all of our costs, reduce all of our revenues, and increase the sprawl that's currently killing us. And so I think our value proposition for this fall is a lot higher than it is for next year, even though it would be easier to coordinate when we have threats of service cuts, when we have folks itching to get behind a campaign of any kind. We have folks who are going to work on their time and their dime, don't get me wrong, but we have folks in this building who are going to look at another year or 2 of flat salaries and no increases, and we're going to lose some of them too. So I do not think it's in the best interest of this authority to wait until next year. I think we give the constraint. I think it's a difficult constraint, but there are many people itching to go, and I think we can get it done in November because I believe in this board and this agency and the people that are actually pushing for transit in this community, and I think we'll get it done. And if I'm on the wrong side of that and we have to wait till next year, I'll happily do all the work between now and then, but I think we can get it done this November.
Trustee Love?
Yeah, thank you. I share the sentiments of my colleagues this morning and ultimately empathize with our riders and our employees and staff and the impacts. However, I think ultimately shaping the value proposition is going to take a coalition-based effort, and we want to have a successful ballot initiative, and not moving too expeditiously, I think, allows us to really shape that value proposition as a shared civic priority and not one that is solely shaped by this agency, because we know that ultimately transit is a product of a civic system. And so how do we build that civic coalition? We saw that happen with CODA. We saw that happen with SORTA. How do we follow suit and really do the hard work, do the runway building of making that value proposition a shared civic vision? Because if that's the transformative work you want to accomplish as an agency, I don't think that happens by moving too expeditiously, unfortunately. I think we can only create that transformative civic vision if we do so in collaboration with others. So,
Trustee Love, I appreciate that, but as you know me very well, moving slow is just not how I roll, how I rock, right? But I will concede with you, understanding the need to build a coalition. And so from my perspective, where I'm at, I'm willing to concede and say, if we go 0.5 and put this on the ballot in May, I can support that. If there are other trustee members that feel as though we need to wait a little bit more, okay, we can do that. Do I want to do that? No. I'm happy to support a November ballot, but if we're compromising here and making that decision, I can go with 0.5 and also in May.
Just, Trustee Love, as a follow-up to your comment about SORTA and CODA, I can't remember if it was mentioned in the last presentation, but were those agencies actively making service cuts while also going
No.
for public support? Okay, so yes, building a coalition of community organizations and businesses is very important, but how do you sell the public on something? Please give us more money, but we already reduced your bus to once an hour. So I definitely don't have the answer for that, but I think it's something for us to maybe talk about right now, or CEO Terry, if you have any thoughts on that from your time in Chicago or Nashville.
I just wanted to chime in. I really appreciate all my colleagues' comments. I'm really concerned about service cuts and how it's affecting workers in getting to their jobs and businesses of all sizes. I think we have to vote today. I think it's really important to make a decision as a board today. I'm really in support of building a coalition. I think we're facing risks on both ends. We're facing risks if we delay doing this in May, but we're also facing risk if we do it too soon. And I'm ready to vote on a 0.5%. I want this to be transformative. I want it to be successful. I really appreciate what you're saying, Trustee Sleesman, as far as doing it as soon as possible and taking the risk. And you've shared some really important research. But I just think that developing this value proposition and getting a PAC up and running is really going to benefit us in the long run. So,
Trustee Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Trustee Love. I think this is going to take more time. I think 2026 is too soon. It's more responsible to put it on sometime next year. I've been involved over 2 decades in campaigns, locally and regionally, and between now and November, in my opinion, does not give enough time. I think it's more responsible to put together a coalition that will resonate not only with the residents, but also the business communities and with cities, and getting that buy-in from businesses in the region and elected officials in the region will take some time. And again, I believe it'd be more responsible to put on for next year.
Good morning. I'm still processing because the original question was, do we vote on something today? And I think there's unanimous support that I'm hearing for yes. I think the question is, what are we voting on? And so I'm happy to reflect on where I'm at in the conversation. But I just want to make that clear that I think we should show the public that we want to move forward with this. But some of us, at least, would like more information before we make a determination on exact timing and exact amount. So that being said, I think this is really tough because you're always in a moment of where you're operating with incomplete information. You can always ask for more information, and at some point you gotta make a call. But I believe very strongly that we need the support of the community behind us. And right now I have not seen anything to give me confidence that we as an agency have a compelling vision for the next 20 years of RTA, let alone that we have communicated that vision to the public. And so that's where I think if we move fast and we move aggressively, we could be looking at a levy in May. Do I think that we can do it this November? I don't feel comfortable. And so I'm very much in support of doing the really hard work necessary to bring together all different stakeholders, not just the communities, not just foundations, not just business, the business community, and not just foundations, and not just leaders in the community. Like, we need the grassroots and the grass tops, I think is the language that has been used before, behind us. And I think that's really important, and that does take time. In terms of the service cuts, I think it was a comment I made at a prior meeting that if there's a way to think creatively so that we could hold off service cuts as long as possible so that impact is minimal, I would really like to entertain those options, because I agree with all of you. I think it's very difficult to cut service at the same time that we're, trying to put forward a vision for the future. I just think that's tough. It's practically tough and it's politically tough. Okay, so that's where I'm at right now. But I think right now, and what I believe my colleague and Mayor Kumar is trying to do with, and Mayor Weiss, by putting this language in front of us, is that we can show public support for moving forward with a levy. But in terms, we might not be ready right now, or at least I agree with this. I'm not ready to make a determination on the amount. I think the amount is something I just don't, I would need more information on. Yes, of course, I want a transformational system, but if that's 0.4 or 0.5, I don't know. And this is a really important decision, and I don't want to rush it. I would like more information first. So that's where I'm at.
To CEO Terry, how important and valuable is the amount as we continue to build the coalition around this?
I appreciate the question. I'm going to ask, we're not going to go into slideshows by any means, but Raj or Doc, if somebody wants to just be able to have that one slide for the amounts, because I think it'll be helpful to be able to have that up for the board, and when the money comes in. So to kind of answer some of the questions, and Trustee Harper, I heard you, as well as Ms. Wiggum. So I'll talk on a couple of things. I came here from a system that had a failed levy. I came here most recently from Nashville, Tennessee. Ironically, they also just had a successful levy for a second bite at the apple within the span of probably, I've been here probably about 7 years, give or take, between ballot box initiatives. Don't quote me on it, Mr. Media, but I want to make sure I'm trying to calculate in my head. almost 8 years between the two. Half of my time there, or less actually, I'd probably say a good year, and you can check with WeGo Transit on that one. I'll just share the quick story. They were coming from a very disinvested from system, if you want to call it that, financially, a very small system compared to the amount of growth that they had in the city. At the time that I got there, 125 people per day was the stat that was moving to Nashville, correct? And I'm sure it's tripled by now. So their need was very different population-wise than Cleveland's need. However, that exacerbated over time as it became a Renaissance city. And so the need to have public transportation available and connected became more and more relevant every day as people started to enter the city. I just offer that for Cleveland to be able to think about, whether it's Mayor Bibb or Executive Ronayne, to be able to understand what transit can do for a community. And to some of the points that were made, whether it was Trustee Sleesman or Trustee Elder, whatever time frame you decide, we have to be able to constantly remind folks that we are the mechanism that gets people to work. We are the mechanism that gets people to appointments. But for transit in many households, those appointments don't happen. And so I say that to mean there is a time lag between when you can, traditionally, when you can be successful in attempt 1 and attempt 2 at the ballot box. So consider that whatever time frame, because I don't want the board to erroneously imagine that we would be right back at it within 6 months, or right back at it even within your tenure on the board as board members, understanding you typically have 3-year appointments. So although it's possible, our system will degrade over time the longer that we wait, especially between bites at the apple. It's not a foregone conclusion that we will win. We hope, we work for it, but I want us to be realistic with that as well. So please position us in a way that prevents lag between going back if we have to. I'll also say the idea of service cuts. I have not experienced or been connected to a system that had simultaneous service cuts and ballot box ask at the same time. It is doable. I know that it is doable. However, the cuts become deeper as we wait. Just to be able to explain, we were originally looking at a 10% service cut for this August. We reduced it to 3 because we did some of the things, Trustee Pachetti, it's hard with the Emily and Emily, I want to make sure I get the names correct. Mayor Kumar mentioned to kind of be able to kind of put ourselves on a diet. We have done that excessively to be able to get to 3% instead of 10 for right now. We can continue to do that and we'll continue to whittle away. Hopefully we will not end up at a 10%, but again, we're looking for 10 million and usually you end up cutting people or service. That's usually the highest labor costs that come in. It's personnel. So we also understand that we are providing a huge amount of service with 2,000 plus people. Sounds like a lot, but when you think about how many folks it takes to put out the service and maintain it, we do a lot of things in-house. We have pride in that. Paratransit is one of them. We also have external partners. So I just mentioned that piece. I don't know if there's anything else I can help you to have information for, but I will say this. The longer we go, November 27, I know is out there. I think the team understands that we will move toward whatever date the board decides. However, if that's a date that's earlier than later, we appreciate that because it's harder for us to be able to explain it to our customers, but we understand we need the buy-in. We also understand the possible crowding at the ballot box the longer we go. So without giving you too much detail, the longer that we go, we understand that we also have opportunity for folks to be coalition builders and detractors. And so we have to make sure that we hit the middle mark somewhere, whether it's in 26 or 27, to be able to get to that point so that folks understand that we are not knee-deep in cuts number 3, even if it's a 3%, 3%, 3%, you know, if we were able to hit that jackpot. So we'll move forward with the direction of the board. It is your decision as a board. We can recommend all day long, but we would like to be able to get moving so that we have the yes in hand so that folks understand that the board has instructed us to move forward.
So just, is this language that we were handed this morning satisfactory for your conversations with community organizations?
This is the language that was presented by the board to us. Let me be very clear, this is not from staff. Right, I understand.
In your opinion, is this satisfactory for the conversations that you've been having?
I would prefer that we take this, and this is just for suggestion, you are my board. I would suggest that we take this language, allow legal to put it into a resolution to be able to, essentially, if this is what you decide, again, if this is what, I would also prefer that the board vote, because we need to be able to have that for the record, correct me if I'm wrong, to make sure that we can have a resolution that says this and gets to the spirit of, if it's 27, this reads as 27, we understand that. And we also understand that we could negotiate up to 0.5%. This is what I'm getting the feeling this says. If this is what you would like, my desire is to have this in a resolution in hand with a date or either time period that the board would come back to this dais and give us a confirmation on the month. That could be a month or two later, the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall, but we need to have that date in hand, and quite frankly, this is the board to do it. I do not want to get into a situation where we say, we thought about it, we hemmed and hawed, we'll come back to it later, and then we find ourselves missing the opportunity for May or November again. So I would prefer that we amend this, put in a date that you decide today to come back to if possible, after we do our coalition building, if that's what the desire of the board is, but we lock it in and we have a formal vote. I know that we do have a committee meeting, so I'm looking at our lawyers when I say this, so we will be here for a little bit longer. We can be able to pop in the language and then get this in front of you for formal vote to make sure that we understand it. And I'll say that it is important, sorry, I don't want to be long-winded, it is important that we have this in a resolution because you represent different sides of the fence on a lot of these areas. And we have to, our team has to have a unified voice in the board. It strengthens our case when we go out to the business community, our riders, to be able to understand that you all agree on a path forward so that we can execute that to the best of our ability.
Ms. Terry, if I may. Thank you. Just noting that the Dr. Kaber and Raj did put up the slide that answers the question of what happens with when to receive the funds based upon which date you select. So don't know if there are any questions, but I just wanted to highlight that. Secondly, you did mention, I think at the outset of the session, that the legal department had provided some draft resolutions. We do have those because we wanted to be ready depending on what it is that the board wanted to do. So we do have a resolution that sets the 0.5% sales tax limit and increase rather, and sets an election date of November 2026. We also have a version that has a blank in it for the sales tax amount and also for the date, if that's your pleasure. And we also have one that is a little less clear and would require the board to come back and provide clarity, because I think what we've been saying is that the business community, our riders and everyone, they're asking us, what does your board want to do and when do they want to do it? And the lack of clarity around that will remain as long as it's not cleared up. And so the more clarity you provide and the more transparency you provide, the better. I appreciate the conversation today, but I would recommend, as India has indicated, that we have a resolution that captures as much specificity as you can. So if you want to have further discussion, you can. We can draft something up or plug something, use what we already have as one of the drafts. We can present that to you. Again, we have 3 different versions. We can give one of those to you. It's your pleasure.
Go ahead, Professor.
It does not seem that there's a level of comfort around the percentage around majority of us, but there seems to be traction towards moving towards a May 2027 ballot initiative. I just want to put that on the floor. And if that's the case, if you agree with at least the May 2027, maybe we can have that conversation and maybe come back to, or maybe the resolution can just say up to, or we come back to that if you can provide some correction here.
No problem. Good question. The resolution can say up to, but state law requires that in order to present it to the electors, to
Yes.
get on the ballot, you have to say specifically what the increase is to be. So you have to say a specific number. So it has to be either 0.25, 0.30, 0.5. So you'd have to come back, but we'll take whatever specificity you want to arrive at today, with the understanding you still have to, if you go with that date, with a date, specific date, but no specific amount, you still have to come back and state what that is to be.
Would the board be comfortable with that? Would people on the board, Chair?
And and again, one vote, everybody's got one vote, but I think making it clear, I mean, I became aware yesterday of most likely another initiative that will be on the fall ballot this year that is not public yet. And
Public as of this morning, by the way, yeah.
okay, so, and I know how both of those entities poll versus RTA. I've been given an update on that. So I do think 27 is a date, and this is really dependent on management getting out there and building that broad-based coalition. And so some of the wording we gave was intended to say, let's move, we're going to move with you. I am fine to let management start here in July and August and really have those conversations and come back at the end of August, beginning of September to finalize an amount. But to Trustee Love's point, I just think you have to have some of that engagement. Does it have to be totally complete? Probably not, but I think you've got to go out there. When I've seen CODA and others do that, they have engaged those people. And as much as many of us are passionate about public transit, I think we have to be realistic about that process.
I will add, if I may add one thing to dovetail for CODA, and I need either Mike or Janet to confirm for me, because I think you guys were closest. They had the vote from their board before the PAC. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, they did. And also, I could add as
Absolutely.
well.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had to go to the legislature to do what
Yeah,
they
that
did.
was another piece. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying your conversations, go out there and
Sure.
say, this is why management is recommending this amount, and starting to have those conversations and engaging people, I think, is to be
Yes.
clear.
Oh, I'm
That
supporting
is-
you 100%.
Yeah, okay.
And I just want to make sure, and forgive me, we have researched the heck out of this thing.
We have.
And I want to make sure that I get the right agency in my mind when I quote it. The legislature, can you talk about that for a moment?
Sure. And Mike, you can chime in as well. But CODA had to go to the Ohio Senate and House several years before they actually got their levy passed in '24 to get state law changed to allow them to structure the use of those funds in the way that they did. The legislature passed it in a few years before, 23, maybe 22? 2022. And the change only applies to CODA, so it does not affect us. But those we talked with at CODA explained it was an arduous, long drawn-out process, and even to this day is a complex process. And so many of the things that they promised, and I'm not telling tales out of school here, that they promised, and you see on their website, people want to see it happen, staff wants to see it happen, but it has not happened. A lot of the things, BRT has not happened, some of the infrastructure things have not happened. There is a sort of a clearinghouse, I'll call it a NOACA-like entity, that has to review grant applications for use of those funds. So what the additional funding that CODA got when they went to the ballot in 2024 did not go to CODA exclusively. It was divided among various other entities and other interests. I mean, and there are board members who are familiar with this process as well. And so I would just caution you about saying, let's do like they did. You got to pull back the curtain and talk to the people and understand what that meant for them. And the same thing applied to Cincinnati. So it's a great theoretical concept, but in application, it is a quagmire. But it took them 2 years, and it delayed some of their projects because they missed certain grant-making cycles because they were still trying to get through the legislature. And those of you who are in politics and understand, that is not an easy task.
So we don't have that kind of time. And there have been articles in Columbus. CODA lost their Link Us manager within 7 months because of some of this stuff. There were so many other things. And the bigger point here is, I mean, we couldn't do that anyway, exactly the way it is. And even if we don't, we we have a risk of service cuts. We have a risk of losing employees. We have the risk of, if the 55 stakeholders that we talked to were all over the map, just going to guess, a third are kind of never going to be with us, a third are somewhere maybe, and a third, I'm guessing. We have a good chunk of people who are already ready to support us to go. We can also organize something after this levy to make sure we're meeting interests of people and working in collaboration. And I think the business community, whomever else, the grass tops, those conversations have to be more ongoing than just this. And we can make sure that the levy funds meet the needs of the community after the fact without risking service cuts, without risking losing employees, without risking the apathy of a whole bunch of people who are ready to support us anyway, without risking a lower turnout election. The two other ballot measures that are going to be on the ballot this fall, I find to be actually complementary, at least in policy, if not in politics. And down in Columbus, they're having trouble. And if we try to do this in a way that pleases everyone up front before the money's even together, we're going to water it down or send it to things. And this is nobody's fault. It's just going to be the way it is, because not everyone, like, transit is unique in that I almost don't think the community should have to pay attention to it. It should just work. But the result is that people are clamoring for like Waymos or the replacement of all fixed routes or something like that. We're at a level of we can't even come close to that. And if we try to do some certain things to get certain, that marginal gain of the next group, we're going to run into the same problem, even without the legislative problem, of this is unmanageable because we were trying to answer too many questions. We were trying to please too many folks with things that aren't core transit service delivery, paratransit, quality fixed route. Maybe we can look at like microtransit in the distant suburbs. But there's a certain point at which this needs to work, and it needs to work well. And chasing the perfect consensus is going to water it down and guarantee that it doesn't work well in the long run. Whereas ongoing conversation, once we have actual revenue that we can actually do something with, and making sure that the service delivery meets what we need and what the community needs, is a different story. I really think that the risks of waiting till next year are much higher than we're actually talking about, when it seems as though, even if not ideal, there is a coalition that's already willing to go and get behind us right now, even if it's not, we might be missing a couple, but I think we're going to lose a few more if we wait, between apathy and service cuts and probable personnel cuts. I think it's a big mistake to wait until next year. I would.
And just to chime in, I don't think we're trying to please everyone. I think those of us in elected office hear loud and strong from our constituents of affordability, especially those people on fixed income. So going into it with our strategy, the value proposition of RTA, and thinking county-wide, it's super important to be thoughtful on that. This is meant to gather input for us to develop our messaging. Management at the end of the day is going to have their recommendation of what they think is best, but that is one of many touch points they will consider. And rushing it, I don't think will allow us to get our message out as well in 26. If you can give me a timeline that you think that works to get that messaging out in the next 2 months and to get around and engage people, have at it. But I think that's a tough sell.
I think there's already people that are itching to get it out and just want us to make a decision. And I think the affordability question is the exact reason why. This town, housing plus transportation, has the exact same per capita or per household spend as New York City on housing plus transportation, because transportation is so expensive relative to incomes here. Housing is cheap, transportation is expensive. It becomes affordable when transit becomes an option for folks, and I want it to be an option for more folks. That's why there's $1,000 plus savings per household when you actually have quality transit. And the timeline's tight. I get it. For a typical political campaign, it's probably impossible, but this ain't typical in that people already rely on this day to day, and some of that service is going to go away. When Engage Cleveland, the Young Professionals Group, does a survey every year of their membership, transit is top 3 every year, and it's usually the first thing. They want better transit. Let's go and give it to them. It's people like that. It's personnel here on their own time and dime who are itching to get moving. It's a whole bunch of social services agencies that rely on transit for their orgs. There are downtown businesses and others who rely on transit for their properties and employees. I think the coalition's already nascent. We just have to actually make the decision. And I really think we're discounting the risks of next year. So I'm throwing up that red flag. If there's not votes for November, I'll vote for May. But I think we should actually count these votes for November and see if we can make this. Because I have faith in this community, in this board, and the personnel here on their own time and dime who will get out there and actually. And I have faith in a lot of those grass tops, to be honest, who are wavering. But once we make the bold decision and deliver the vision, because we do have a few months to do that and make those meetings, I really think we can get this done.
So Trustee Sleesman, I agree with you. I would also think that there is a compelling enough vision in case to go for November, but I feel that several members of the Board of Trustees have already made it very apparent that they are not. So for the sake of enabling management to do what they need to do and allowing them to act, can we amend this language to say that the board supports a May 2027 initiative for an amount up to 0.5% and a final amount to be determined by August 18th? So that way we are time boxing these conversations and it's not dragging on and on and on, and we're going around and around and around, and Raj doesn't have to keep presenting the same slides.
Yep.
I just want to say I'm in agreement with Emily.
Yeah. We need
I
that.
support that as well.
I was just going to add, there's part science and part art to this that we all know. What we proposed was what we thought was the baseline that the majority of the board would support. I think, frankly, I think there were lots of us that it would hope and expect that May would be the actual date, but we wanted to make sure there was flexibility to do it. I'm personally, I'm in support of that. That's where I was kind of coming out even before this language was, we think May is doable. I also think when we're out talking, we have to be able to listen to our community and our employees and our stakeholders. And we need to be able to react and adjust accordingly. And so to me, the date is one thing, the amount is another. So I'm very supportive of May and the language of up to half while we're out building these coalitions. So that's where I'm at.
If I may, Mr. President, and legal has a draft resolution that seems to fit where you are. And so if I can just...
Can we amend this by reading?
Let me confirm.
Can I just read what we've got?
Yeah,
and then
if we can, so we can see. Yeah.
Because we can put it in front of you. It's just a matter of what. Here it reads. The heading reads as this: submitting to the electors of Cuyahoga County the question of whether the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority's existing 1% sales and use tax for all transit purposes shall be increased by up to 0.5% to provide additional general revenue for the authority for a continuing period. And then the operative language in the resolution would say that the question of, strike that, let me go back up. Section 1 of the resolution would read then that it's necessary to levy a sales and use tax pursuant to sections 5739.023 and 5741.022 of the revised code to increase the sales and use tax by up to 0.5% for the purpose of providing additional general revenue to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority for a final rate of up to 0.5% for a continuing period of time. Section 2 says that the question of the levy of such tax shall be submitted to the electors of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority at the special election to be held within the territorial boundaries thereof on May 4th, 2027, as authorized by law. And so and then the last piece would be that the board commits to making timely decisions on the rate of sales tax to be authorized by the board's resolution, and whether the levy, well, that would be fixed. And the levy would be placed on the May 4, 2027 special election ballot. So it means you come back, if you wanted to put a specific date when you come back, that's your call. But this at least captures the fact that you know you've got to come back to make a date, to set the amount, but you've already set the date. That gives some definition and clarity to those that we're going out to, or that you're going to be going out to. And so the only thing that remains to be decided is how much is the increase, but at least says it's up to 0.5, which is the statutory limit. So if that sounds okay, we can work with this, if that's okay, and come back to you with a version that'll be in front of you. If you want to suspend I'm not suggesting what you do, Mr. President, but sure. You can suspend your trustee meeting, take the committee stuff, and then come back, and we'll have this ready for you, if that's what you want to do.
And I somewhat favor just the process there of the additional engaging support with community leaders and stakeholders. I think that's important to show that we want to reach out to people. And in your first sentence or two, you shall increase up to 1.5%. I just would want to look at that wording, because it's shall, it means must in my book when we write legislation, so I would just want to look at the semantics of that. But those would be my two comments. And my only comment for management, given the summer schedules and vacations of different entities, if there's enough information to come back in August and make that final determination on the rate, that's great. But I'm not adverse of giving them a few weeks more if we need it. I don't think the end of August or the middle of September is going to make a whole lot of difference if we're moving along, and I want to make sure they have enough time to have that engagement. Based on my comments, you can see I think that's an important part, and we need to give management time on that, but we need to move with purpose. And I don't think an August versus a September date really is going to affect things too much. It just gives you a little bit more time for me not to come back and say you haven't done enough yet.
I've already looked at the dates. I support that, that ask. If I may, yes. I actually would suggest, so Trustee Harper mentioned August 18th. I would actually counter that with September 22nd, or September 8th actually is the committee meeting in September, because it gives us a solid 2 months
and
to be able to go out.
If you've got enough data and you can come back to us sooner, that's great.
Yeah. I
just don't want to box you in and then have another discussion.
I appreciate you all, but I agree. I do like, if I can say this, I appreciate the board, and I'll say this, the team, on behalf of the team, we're excited to go after this. This is a long time coming for Cleveland. And I would say this without asking the writers, but I'm just going to say it on their behalf too. We need to be able to explain how important transportation is for Cleveland. It comes up in every conversation, business leaders included, as a reason why either we can't get folks to come to Cleveland, to stay in Cleveland, or to visit. Transportation is at the very top of all of those conversations, and at some point we have to address the elephant in the room, and this levy does that. We have to be able to ask folks if they're really serious about transportation and mobility concerns being top of mind. We understand the idea that everyone is tax weary. We get that. We all pay them. We understand it. But I do think we have to be able to propose and put the question to the community, and really dispel the misnomer that transportation is free. We have long time been looked at as a social service that somehow is funded by the financial fairies that sprinkle money in our budget books, and that's not the case. So we do like to be able to continue to serve the public, and we really do need the public support on this. We need the leaders' support on this. I will say that the May versus November and 27, I think, is the better selection for timing because of everything that was mentioned. I'm very careful not to give my opinion as a business leader for RTA, so I will just say this. As I mentioned before, urgency is of the essence, but also making sure that we have the camaraderie and the buy-in to be able to get us over the line. We have one shot at this, and we want to make sure it's right. So I appreciate that. I would suggest that we offer maybe September, if that is doable, to give us a solid 2 months. And that's, we understand that we have to make good on those commitments to go out to those communities. For our own sanity, I would suggest that legal work on this ASAP to be able to get this in front of you for formal adoption today. I did hear that through this board that the majority of you are comfortable with agreeing on something today, and if that's the language, then that would provide our team a lot more, it puts a lot there, right? When we go out into these communities to say that our board has given us direction. And then quite frankly, we hope that that'll get us in the doors with people because they understand that we have 2 months plus to be able to come back to you with their information as well.
And-
Did I miss anything?
Janet, and because we have to come back for a final legal language, you could look at what was submitted here to incorporate some of that. I think, that is meant to give the message out to the community that the board management are in support of this. And then when we come back for a vote on the final amount, all your legalese can be in there. That might be something to consider just for ease of preparing that.
What was the September date?
So this September, the original proposal was August 18th, which is the board date for August.
Gotcha.
So the committee date for September is September 8th, and the board date for September is September 22nd.
So what date would you like to have in here as to when the board would come back with a decision by? And we can make it the out date, no later than or by.
I will offer this to the board for consideration because you tell me, but my assumption is we would come in front of committee with our findings and information on the 8th, no later than. And hopefully before that, we'll be able to give you, as we go along, we'll be giving updates and all of that. But I would say no later than September 22nd, because that gives us the final kind of putting down the gauntlet on when we can.
That allows for some conversation and questions.
Absolutely.
Follow up.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, and we'll be coming back to you. We'll probably get on your nerves between now and September with updates of how things are going. But I think the 22nd allows us for enough time to be able to get those meetings. Because to be honest with you, it takes a while to get on people's calendars. And so I don't want us to short ourselves for the summertime.
I like a deadline, so thank you for that.
I'm with you.
That's a Duke Ellington thing. Give me a deadline. I'd just like to thank the board for the discussion. We have differences of opinions, which is good because if we didn't, that would be frightening. But getting behind something is great. And I also like to thank everyone for not wanting to wait until November of 27, because then we would have. If you think I have strong opinions now, that would be an even worse one. But it's good to see us get behind something and actually put it in writing. So appreciate the conversation.
So we're going to take
Janet, are you going to come back to us?
We are. I didn't want to leave yet until you were recessed, and then it was
I'm going to
safe
make
for me
a
to leave the
motion
room.
to recess this meeting so that we can go into some committee.
second.
There's a public hearing on the tax budget. Yeah, well, in one of the committees, there's a public hearing on the tax budget. So we'll have public comment on that.
Yeah, that's not on the right now. Sure.
For what it's worth, we have a public hearing on the tax budget for 2027.
You can make your comment.
That is a directly related item, so feel free.
Yes, that'd be great. There was a second. All in favor of recessing this meeting?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're going to recess that, and then we'll turn it over to operational planning and infrastructure.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee at 10:15. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Sleesman?
Here.
Ms. Pachetti?
Here.
Mayor Gallo?
Here.
Ms. Harper?
Here.
Mr. Love?
Here.
Have quorum.
All right, we have 3 items, the final one of which is that tax budget. But the first is the first is approval of minutes from June 2nd, 2026. We have those in front of us. If we have any comments, corrections, or revisions, we'll hear those now, and if not, I'll move to approve. Do I have a second?
Second, Pachetti.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes from June 2nd, 2026 stand approved. We have, next we have an RFP procurement, a competitive negotiated procurement for professional consulting services for safety and security certification of major rail projects. And we'll get a presentation from Joe Schaefer and Jonathan Lawley. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Apologies, we have technical difficulties in the back.
Who was it that said they had a document? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, we need to do that.
No pressure, Joe.
Well, I want to wait till
Yeah,
the
no
chair
problem.
comes back. Yeah, technical difficulties. Okay, let's start again. Chair Sleesman, members of the committee, members of the board. I'm Joe Schaefer, Director of Engineering, also responsible for safety certification. And I'm going to present on consulting services for safety and security certification of GCRTA rail transit projects, and this is the 4th in a series of projects. This project will incorporate safety and security more fully into transit projects by providing a consistent process for verifying safety and security requirements through all phases of project activity. And this is an FTA requirement for fixed guideway projects such as BRTs, rail tracks. Work is by task order assignment, and the total task orders are not to exceed $650,000 over a 36-month term. Potential examples include the Blue Line stations reconstruction, the West Park, West Boulevard, Cedar, and Superior platform replacement on the Red Line, the West 25th Metro Health BRT line construction, the West 25th Street Station rehabilitation, and other projects as needed. Now I'll turn it over to Jonathan Lawley.
Good morning, Chairman Sleesman, members of the board, committee and the board. Jonathan Lawley, Program Contract Manager. The request for this proposal was issued on April 27th, 2026. 14 interested parties received the reviewed the solicitation, 4 submitted a proposal, and all 4 were interviewed. The evaluation members for this project came from the Engineering and Project Development Department, Safety Department, Office of Management and Budget, Office of Business Development, as well as the Procurement Department. The evaluation criteria, as indicated by the Brooks Act, is we look at the project manager, the assigned staff, the past performance, the project approach, location, majority work, as well as DB participation. The most highly qualified firm for this project was K&J Safety and Security Consulting Services Incorporated. As a result of the interim final rule, the DB Eagle has not been provided for this project. The K&J Safety and Security Consulting Services, Inc. has successfully completed projects for the Authority, WMATA, SEPTA, and the Puerto Rico Integrated Transit Authority, among other firms. K&J Safety and Security Consulting Incorporated has performed well on past GCRTA project, and they do have a knowledgeable staff when it comes to our system. The staff is requesting this committee award to K&J Safety and Security Consulting Services Incorporated for this project in an amount not to exceed $650,000 for a period of 36 months. Questions?
Any questions from the committee or the board as a whole? Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. It looks as though we don't have any questions. With that, do we have a motion to move this to the full board?
Motion, Gallo.
Second, Love.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That will move forward to the full board for approval. Thank you very much. Next up, we have intergovernmental student transportation agreement for the 2026-2027 school year with the Cleveland Municipal School District. And we'll get a presentation from John Toffer from accounting. John, take it away.
Good morning, Chair Sleesman, members of the committee, members of the board. My name is John Toffer, Director of Accounting. I will be presenting to you an intergovernmental agreement for student transportation with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District for the school year of the 2026-2027. Since 2006, CMSD has partnered with GCRTA to purchase discounted student fares. As in the past, CMSD wants to make public transportation available to its students on a daily basis. This agreement is for students in grades 9 through 12 for the school year beginning August 24, 2026, ending on June 23, 2027. At CMSD's request, these passes will be valid for 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. for the entire school year. There is no blackout periods. This is a volume pricing discount or agreement for $2,500,000 and is based on projected student rides for the past 2 years for CMSD is approximately 1.5 million riders or rides. This agreement will be only for the students who have the CMSD GCRTA picture ID pass or card. This is an example of their student ID card, and for internal control purposes, this card has a magnetic stripe that is farebox compatible, and it also allows us to suspend cards if they are lost or stolen. This agreement also states that GCRTA will supply 13,500 student ID cards or passes for the 2026-2027 school year. CMSD will provide or pay us a lump sum payment of $2,250,000 in September, and the balance will be reconciled and paid at the end of the school year based on the actual rides, and those rides will be paid at $1.67 per ride. GCRTA will reconcile the actual CMSD student rides and issue that final bill or credit memo at the end of the school year. And as in prior years, we will supply CMSD those actual monthly student rides every month. And any tickets above and beyond this agreement will be paid for at $1.75, which is our current student fare rate. This is just for the past 3 years, the revenue generated with the school year 2026-2027. Once again, approximate revenue would be $2,500,000 for 1,500,000 rides. And you can see the other 2 years are very compatible to that request. Finally, just a staff request that the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the approval of the Intergovernmental Student Transportation Agreement with CMSD for the school year 2026-2027. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the committee or the board? Yep.
Yeah, could you remind the board that I believe this covers grades 9 through 12, is that right? How do we handle younger students?
Well, we don't handle their students specifically with this agreement. I mean, they have the yellow bus This is specifically for 9th through 12th graders where they would not have the yellow bus system in place.
Thank you.
And the terms of this were essentially the same as last year.
Correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to move this to the full board for approval?
Harper.
Second, Pichetti.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Stands approved, and
Thank
we'll
you.
move to the full board for approval. Finally, we have a 2027 tax budget presentation. Presenters will be Kay Satula and Wendy Fine. So is yours.
Good morning, Chair Sleesman, members of the committee, and members of the board. My name is Kay Satula. I'm the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. With me today is Wendy Finn. She's a Budget Management Analyst 3 in OMB. And we will be presenting the 2027 tax budget. So the tax budget is an estimate of revenues for the next fiscal year. This is the beginning of the budget process. The budget is a dynamic process, meaning that we review revenues and expenses monthly. And as more information comes in, we incorporate that information into the budget. What we will see here will be different than what you've seen in the past in April and June, just because we have gathered more information. So the schedule, May 2026, we presented the capital budget, which was adopted by the board. This is submitted earlier in the year to align with FTA, NOACA, and ODOT fiscal years. Today, we are presenting the 2027 tax budget. We will hold a public hearing and request that the committee recommend to the full board for adoption on July 21st. Next month, in August, we will begin the operating budget development process for fiscal year 2027. In November, we will present the 2027 budget, which includes the operating budget and transfers to other funds, to the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee. We will also have another public hearing. And then in December, we will present the 2027 budget again, hold a second public hearing at the committee, and we will recommend to the committee to present the budget to the full board for adoption on December 15th. As stated earlier, the budget is a dynamic process, and we refine our projections based on this updated information. We are continuing to work with departments and divisions to identify cost savings, and after the development of the tax budget largely focused on revenues, we will begin the 2027 budget process. The Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, has maintained interest rates at their June 2026 meeting. The FOMC is forecasting that inflation will remain between 3.5% and 4.5% in 2027. Ridership and passenger fares are projected to increase at modest rates in 27, and the new rail cars will start beginning running on the Red Line. Sales tax is projected to increase by 2.2% from 2026 projected levels. The 2027 tax budget includes annualized cost-saving measures that we implemented in 2025 and 2026. These include personnel costs, which include salaries, overtime, payroll taxes, and fringes. We've been hiring more part-time operators. Increases are largely contractual, and it includes a 3% service reduction that will be implemented in August 2026. As a reminder of what was presented in April and June, this information was based from March. Updated information on revenues and expenses were received and applied. And as you will see in the upcoming slides, the information has changed slightly from the information on this slide. And now I will turn it over to Wendy Finn.
Good morning.
Morning.
Revenues are the focus of the tax budget. The biggest source of revenues being sales and use tax, which is estimated to be $286.1 million in 2027. This is a 2.2% increase over 2026 estimates. Revenue reimbursements includes preventive maintenance, which is projected at $4.7 million, and other reimbursements at $1.9 million. We're estimating that we're going to need to transfer $28 million from the reserve fund for revenue stabilization, and this is to maintain the 1-month operating reserve to adhere to the current financial policy in the general fund. Total revenues for fiscal year 2027 tax budget are estimated to be $357.1 million. The transfer needed from reserve may decrease if the revenues come in higher than these estimates show. The numbers in blue font show the estimates that have changed from the earlier presentations that you saw. These estimates are updated based on 6 months of 2026 actuals. Again, showing 2027 projected revenues. The two largest sources are sales and use tax, which is about 80% of revenues, and passenger fares, which is close to 9% of revenues. Under the reserve fund, there's a $28 million transfer for revenue stabilization to maintain that 1-month ending balance in the general fund. On the expenditure side, projected expenditures in the 2027 tax budget are $357.9 million. Most of this is for personnel, which totals $266.6 million. This includes salary, overtime, payroll taxes, and fringe benefits. These payroll estimates include the annualized impact of the 3% service reduction that is planned to start in August of 2026. It does not incorporate any other additional service reductions that are being considered. These personnel estimates do include the hiring freeze for non-essential personnel that's currently in place and the increase in hiring of part-time operators. The next 3 largest categories for expenditures include services, materials, and supplies at $23 million, purchase transportation at $17.3 million, and this estimate is based on new purchase transportation third-party contracts that took effect this year. Fuel and utilities is estimated at $14.4 million, and this line also has an increase. This line has an increase due to increased usage and costs. Transfers to other funds total $17.5 million. These are for specific set-asides for insurance, the capital program, debt services, pension, and reserve funds. The transfer to capital is updated based on updates to the sales and use tax revenues, since it's a percent of sales and use tax. The transfer to capital does have a temporary reduction from 10% to 5% of sales tax, and that is in effect through in 2027 and 2028, with a plan for it to return to 10% starting in 2029. Again, on the expenditure estimate, total personnel costs are about 75% of total expenditures, which includes salaries and fringe benefits. The next largest categories are inventory, materials, services, and supplies at about 10% of expenses, purchase transportation at close to 5%, and fuel and utilities at 4%. For the fiscal year 2027 tax budget, total revenues are estimated at $357.1 million. Total expenditures are estimated at $357.9 million, and the estimating ending balance in the general fund is $28.4 million, which would maintain the 1-month ending balance. For 2028, a transfer of $16 million is planned from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve Fund, which would leave a 15-day reserve in that Revenue Stabilization Fund, which would adhere to the board policy, which was approved in December of 2025. With the updated information, the estimated ending reserve in 2020, at the end of 2028 would be 1.0 months. This is a slight change from the previous presentation where we thought it would be 0.9 month reserve. In fiscal year 2029, there is estimated to be a $30 million shortfall, this being the difference between revenues and expenditures. This 2027 tax budget annualizes the service reductions that are planned to begin next month. It does not include any other service reductions that have been discussed. We will be starting 2027 operating budget development next month, and in that process, we will analyze and review other reduction options. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee or the board as a whole? I think a lack of questions reflects uncertainty around whether or not we're going to have to redo this entire thing. But given that there are no questions, we have a public hearing. So I will make a motion. Well, I'll ask for a motion to suspend the committee for the public hearing.
Motion, Gallo.
Do I have a second?
Second, Pachetti.
All those in favor? Do we have to do a roll call on that? Aye? No? Okay. So we will have a public hearing for the 2027 tax budget. Could I get the budget statement read, please?
Good morning, Chair Sleesman, members of the committee, and members of the board. My name is Wendy Finn. I'm a budget management analyst with the Office of Management and Budget. This is the official public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2027 tax budget for the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. The information for the tax budget has been made available for public inspection on the authority's website, X, and Facebook page. Public notice of this hearing has been given by publication of legal advertisements in the Cleveland Plain Dealer on June 19th, 2026, and June 21st, 2026, and the Call and Post on June 17th, 2026, and June 21st, 2026, as well as by posting of notice in the first floor lobby of the authority's main office building, at the Customer Service Center in the Tower City Rotunda, RTA Facebook page, X, and on the internet website. Notification was given on these sites on how to virtually attend live streaming the committee meeting, public hearing, and board meeting, and how to submit a comment for public hearing. The fiscal year 2027 tax budget was presented to the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee of the RTA Board of Trustees on July 7th, 2026. This is the initial analysis and forward-looking document toward estimated revenues for the next fiscal year. This is the first step in a valuable tool in the budget development process. The tax budget estimates revenues at $357.1 million. Sales and use tax receipts are projected at $286.1 million, a 2.2% increase from 2026 levels. Total passenger fares are budgeted at $31.9 million, an increase of 1.5%. Transfers from the reserve fund includes $28 million from revenue stabilization to maintain a 1-month ending balance. Reimbursed expenditures includes operating reimbursements for preventive maintenance, force account labor, and other miscellaneous reimbursements. For the fiscal year 2027 tax budget, reimbursed expenditures are projected at $6.7 million, $5.2 million for preventive maintenance, and $1.5 million for capital labor and other reimbursements combined. Total expenditures for the 2027 tax budget are projected at $357.9 million, which includes $340.4 million for operating expenditures and $17.5 million for transfers to other funds. The transfer to capital is budgeted at $14.3 million, which includes $5.7 million for the transfer to the bond retirement fund to pay the principal and interest and maintain the recommended ending balance, and $18.6 million for the transfer to the capital improvement fund. The transfer to capital has been temporarily reduced to 5% as approved by the Board of Trustees in May of 2026. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now take public comment. Are there any in-person comments? The gentleman seems to no longer be here. Anyone else in public, in person that wants to give comment? If not, do we have any phone comments?
We have no callers on the line.
you have any email or web form?
There were no comments received.
In that case, I will ask for a motion to reconvene the committee meeting.
Motion, Gallo.
Second, Love.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Then I'll go ahead and move this proposal to the full board for approval. Do I have a second? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Is your mic on?
Sorry. I guess just from a process standpoint, understanding that there will be additional revisions made to the forecast for 27 with service and personnel consideration, from a process standpoint, do we need to move to full board approval for the July meeting, or do we want to keep that open in order to take into account the continued evolution?
We have to have a decision by the board for July. It has to be approved by the board. We do then have to submit this to the county, and then they can submit it to the state. So we do have to have a tax budget for the authority.
Yes, recognizing the timelines, in your timeline, there may be additional changes. Yep.
Trustee Love, this is Raj, just chiming in for further clarity. This is a best practice, if you will. So this initiates the whole budget process for us. The board is not approving any appropriations in this budget. It is a requirement by the county and the state, et cetera. When the real budgeting process starts in August, September, that's the appropriations that the board will be approving at the December 2026 meeting.
Tax budget is just required to show the need for the resources from sales tax. So just showing that there is a need, that's part of that process.
That is correct. Thank you.
All those in favor of moving this to the full board?
Aye.
Any opposed? This will move to the full board for approval at the July board meeting. That is all of our items for the Operational Planning Infrastructure Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Pachetti.
Second, Love.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? This meeting stands adjourned at 10:43.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee meeting, Tuesday, July 7th at 10:44. Could I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Pachetti?
Here.
Mayor Gallo?
Here.
Mr. Love? Ms. McPherson?
Here.
Mr. Sleesman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have 2 items on the agenda this morning. But first, before those, we have approval of minutes. Sorry, almost forgot about that one. From the June 2nd meeting, which you have in front of you. Any questions or comments on those minutes? We're hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Those minutes are approved. Our first presentation is for an IFB procurement, a competitive procurement to purchase a production switch tamper. I'd like to welcome James Burke, vehicle engineer, and Jonathan Lall, program contract manager, to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Pachetti, committee members, and members of the board. My name is James Burke. I'm here with Jonathan Lally to present the procurement of a tamper. A tamper is a specialized rail maintenance vehicle designed to lift and line rail and compact the ballast beneath the ties to prevent them from shifting and to ensure track stability and precise rail alignment. This procurement is to replace our current tamper, which was received in 1997, so it's almost 30 years old, and it is now too wide to fit into the platform configuration when it will be expanded, extended, and updated. As shown on the screen is an example of the new tamper, which will operate within the new rail car envelope when the platforms are extended. Jonathan?
All right, good morning again. This invitation for bid was issued on May 18th, 2026. 3 interested parties reviewed the solicitation. The bids were received on June 18th, 2026, and 2 firms submitted a bid. The lowest responsive and responsible vendor for this project is Harsco Metro Rail LLC. They will be manufacturing this machine. Harsco Metro Rail LLC maintains a global customer base of more than 125 railways throughout the world. They are expert in engineering, innovative technology, dedicated parts and services, and quality maintenance from 9 main locations in the US, UK, Germany, India, Brazil, China, and Australia. Staff is requesting this committee recommend award to Harsco Metro Rail LLC for this procurement in a contract amount not to exceed $1,950,000. Questions?
Can you remind us what a tamper is and why it's important, please? Thank you.
Shown on the screen, there's a picture of the tamper. A tamper is a rail work maintenance vehicle used for the transit system. It lifts and aligns the rail and then proceeds to compact the ballast or the layer of stone that's around the ties to make sure that the ties don't move or shift when the heavy trains go on top of them. If we don't line and a rail the track, it turns into spaghetti with the heat and expansion and contraction of the climate. So it's a daily or weekly need for the transit system to tamp the system.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Not for me. Anything from the committee or a full board? Okay, I'd like to move to take this to the full board. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Jonathan, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name. Okay, so moving on, the next presentation is RFP Procurement, competitive negotiated procurement for community and customer surveys for a period of 3 years with 2 one-year options. And our presenters are Nick Bigger, Senior Director of Customer Experience and Performance Management, Natoya Walker-Minor, Deputy General Manager, Administration and External Affairs, and Scott Lawson, Contract Administrator. Thank you all. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Chair Pachetti, members of the board. My name is Nick Bigger. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Experience and Performance Management here at the RTA. And I'm presenting on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Natoya Walker-Minor, who is our DGM of Administration and External Affairs, as well as Wendy Talley, who is our Director of Training and Employee Development. And so we're here today to talk about survey services. For a little bit of context, for the last 4 years, RTA has had formal mechanisms to capture the voices of our customers, the voices of our community members, and the voices of our employees. This direct feedback from these different populations really help us to gain a direct understanding of where they are, and help us to get a good understanding of the direction we need to go. We're seeking to continue to gather that feedback with our request before you today. To spend a little bit of time differentiating the 3 types of surveys. The customer experience survey is directly engaging with our customers. So we utilize onboard randomized intercept surveys. That's an industry best practice to gather customer feedback. We do this across all modes of service. So on our fixed route bus service, on our rail service, our bus rapid transit service specific to the Healthline, as well as paratransit. We also have community value surveys. So these surveys go out to the community at large. It's inclusive of riders of RTA as well as non-riders. This survey really helps us get a good understanding of our value, our sense of value, our value to the community at large, as well as personal value, personal relevance to community members. And our last type of survey is our employee surveys. So this is an internal mechanism that helps us to measure workplace culture, job satisfaction, and engagement. I want to go back one slide just to highlight something. As we're looking forward to our proposed engagement with a vendor, you can see up here the frequency with which we're trying to gather this feedback. So we're looking to conduct our customer experience surveys on a quarterly basis. So we'd have 4 waves of survey data coming in every year. Community value surveys once per year, and employee surveys once per year. The scope of services we're looking for, so we're looking to partner with an industry leader who can help collaborate with us on design of the survey instrument, as well as deploying it out. So we want the firm to be mindful of our performance management cadence. So our traction program, as you guys might recall, we have several metrics on our traction scorecard that are derived directly from survey data. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting that timeline with our cadence. We certainly are looking for a firm that's able to administer statistically valid surveys. And we want the firm to utilize to collect the data utilizing modern technology, so tablets, putting things into online databases to facilitate raw data sharing. A little bit more about the surveys. I spoke about this earlier. So for our customer experience surveys, we're looking for randomized onboard intercept surveys. So this is getting out there onto our service, actively waiting at our bus stop so that we're engaging directly with customers utilizing the service. Again, this is the industry best practice for gathering customer experience data. For paratransit, it's a little bit more nuanced. So we're looking for telephone and or direct mail to engage with those customers. The same thing for our community members at large, so people who live in our service area within Cuyahoga County. And then for our employee survey, we'll administer those through a combination of electronic and or paper surveys. The firm that we partner with would collect and analyze the surveys and share the survey results with GCRTA. They'll also provide executive summaries of the survey results. So we're specifically looking for data levels, data trends, and comparisons to peer agencies to have a really good understanding of where we stand with these 3 populations of people, as well as identifying key drivers of success and opportunities to improve performance. I'm going to turn it over now to Scott Lawson.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Pachetti, Chairman, and members of the board and the committee. My name is Scott Lawson. I'm the contract administrator on this procurement. So procurement overview, the request for proposal was issued on February 23rd, 2026. It was accessed on website GCRTA by 42 interested parties. Proposals were due on April 2nd and 4 firms proposed. The evaluation panel consisted of members from Office of Management and Budget, Training and Employee Development, Customer Experience and Performance Management, Administration, External Affairs, and Management Information Systems. The evaluation criteria consisted items in reference to experience, completeness of proposal, technology, and cost. The recommended firm is ETC Institute, located in Olathe, Kansas. ETC has over 40 years of experience working in this industry of designing, administrating market research surveys. They have over more than 60 satisfied customers, and over 5 years have done over 300,000 surveys. And they also offer senior level personnel that lead the day-to-day operations for those surveys that are conducted. And they utilize electronic services such as tablets and dashboards in order for those surveys to be completed. Additional statistical reports and database include the data visualization of dashboards that are going to be provided to the authority, and they are industry leader in surveying oversight technologies and collection methods. They maintain a presence and have collected over 25,000 surveys in the Cleveland metropolitan area over 15 years. Their clients include the GCRTA, Los Angeles Metro, amongst others. The staff requests that the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the award for survey services to ETC Institute in an amount not to exceed $658,122 for the base 3 years in an amount not to exceed $219,374 for each of 2 option years for a total contract not to exceed $1,096,870 for a 5-year period. Any questions?
Any questions from committee members or the full board on this one?
I had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many responses are you typically trying to generate for each survey, and like what's the duration of the survey period?
Good morning. To answer that question, it's Dr. Natoya Walker Minor. Typically for our customer experience, it's approximately 1,200. That is always our goal. For the community value, is typically approximately 600. For our employee engagement, we work diligently every year, and over the last few years, we've been able to get it up to just under 51%. That is probably a 200% increase over the last 3 years. Is that about accurate, George? Because
that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and overview. Just so I understand, could you speak a little bit more to the consolidation or bringing in-house the data collection and customer service and satisfaction? How does this relate to that shift from TransPro to taking that work in-house and partnership with ETC?
I've been here 5.5 years, and for a first 1.5 years or so, we worked with TransPro. During that time, Dr. Caver and I specifically started thinking about and learning more about what's termed customer experience. The Big 10 firms were doing it. All of the larger corporations across the country had began to do that. And we saw that there would be tremendous value if we brought it in-house so that we too can begin to fully embrace customer experience. We had a conversation with India. The data pointed to that. Our ongoing conversations with TransPro pointed to that. And fortunate for us, we had the candidate in-house, Nicholas Bigger. And so Nick has been in his role for about 18 months or so, So bringing it in-house for us allowed us, with the team he has of 3, to really look at the data, to go through the data, and analyze the data, and we control what's going on inside of the organization. It also reduced expenses somewhat, if you will, but having the in-house capability and talent to lead performance management within the organization has helped us substantially to hold one another accountable and to get to the better outcomes, because we're holding each other accountable by monthly meetings facilitated by our own internal staff to do that work. And because the full team in customer experience and performance management were all RTA employees, the familiarity was there. There wasn't an onboarding that was required. And so the depth of knowledge for the greater connectivity across all that we're doing and traction was there.
If I could just build on that. So if I understand correctly, this contract will complement and complete this transition from TransPro to internal, and now where internal is leading, and this contract provides the support from an outside firm, but they're supporting the survey work that's led from GCRTA. Am I understanding this correctly? It's kind of like the final piece, or just in the realm of understanding how all the pieces fit together?
To clarify, we so in the world of philanthropy, there's something called stair-step down funding. So we stair-step down our work with TransPro over a 3-year period, right? So the last time that you saw a staff person from TransPro here was in January of this year, for which we concluded our engagement with TransPro. During those last 2 years, ETC, the recommended provider for this resolution, was our provider for our survey services. TransPro essentially was facilitating data analysis and some reporting to us. bringing in-house our customer experience team led by Nick and customer experience and performance management has enabled us to fully embrace and lead from within without relying on a contractor for that. ETC provides the survey services. And so our ongoing relationship with ETC, mine and Nick specifically, has been incredible. They're incredibly responsive. They have amazing dashboards, and they have intel that helps us specifically as we lead internally, and in particular with the work that he's leading when we hold our monthly traction meetings. So we've had ETC for a while. They've been great. That is one of the reasons why they're being selected again. They won this bid because of what they put into their proposal and what we know their work to be. So it helps us substantially.
Excellent. So it just keeps the continuity. That's very
correct.
helpful. Thank you. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of surveys. And I know, Dr. Walker-Miner, you appreciate data, and you will help ensure that the data gets used and deployed to improve our services. So thank you. I would want to say, just for the board and members of the public, that we repeatedly hear that this is one of the things that make GCRTA stand out, is that we repeatedly go back to the community and ask for input, whereas many other transit agencies do not as frequently or to the level that we do. So I think that's commendable, and I really appreciate the work. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to move this to the full board for approval.
So moved, Sisman.
Second, McPherson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. And I also want to recognize Trustee Love is new to our committee, so welcome, Trustee Love. I'm sure you will add a lot of insight, and I really appreciate you being willing to come on board. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move, McPherson.
Second, Gallo.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
I think we will have that resolution back momentarily, correct? So before we can reconvene the meeting, why don't we just take a 3-minute break? I'm sure we could all use that. The special board meeting, I'll make a motion to that effect. Do I have a second?
Second, Pachetti.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. In front of us, I think we're going to amend by reading for what was in the board packets. And Brent, if you want to introduce Resolution 2026-43.
Submitting to the electors of Cuyahoga County the question of whether the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority's existing 1% sales and use tax for all transit purposes may be increased by up to 0.5% to provide additional general revenue for the authority for a continuing period of time.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I think this obviously will be in the approved minutes, but reflects the conversation that we had earlier about a date on the ballot for May 27, an increase up to 1.5%, but that will be subject to additional conversations and input from management, and they will be back to us on that for a board vote no later than the end of September. I think that summarizes it. Any other comments?
No comments. Sounds good to me.
Okay. There are no other comments at this point in time. I think we've had those. I did ask for a motion and a second.
Smith Wiggum, motion.
Second, Pachetti.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A resolution 2026-43 passes. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.